A long time ago, in an imaginary period of the Earth's past, populations battled against the forces of evil. In the tumult, Middle-earth took quite a battering. This was an era when men, elves and dwarves united against the Dark Lord Sauron. The Master of Evil had forged the One Ring to govern all races. Picked up by a little man or hobbit, the One Ring is highly coveted. It must be destroyed at all costs. And so, the Fellowship of the Ring embarks upon a long and dangerous journey across Middle-earth. They cross rivers and forests where the trees speak. They fight the ghastly orcs of the wizard Saruman the White. They cross the misty mountains, passing Gondor, the last kingdom of free men, and ending up in the Gap of Rohan, home to a superior breed of horses, where they ask for help from the good king of Ederas. They journey to the depths of the earth, entering the Moria mines dug out by dwarves. They climb solitary peaks, including the reputedly insurmountable and vertiginous Caradhras Mountains. Finally, they follow sly Gollum, who offers to guide them towards Mordor, the land of Sauron, and the end of this epic journey. It was in New Zealand, this country composed of two main islands, North Island and South Island, that Peter Jackson filmed the whole of the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, the work of J.R.R. Tolkien, published in the 1930s. The fantasy world created by the British author might be mainly inspired by medieval England, but the region of Waikato on North Island is the ideal embodiment of the green, hilly country of Middle-earth. This agricultural region, the richest in New Zealand, was bought from the Maoris in the 19th century by an Englishman who made it prosper by raising horses and sheep. In Tolkien's story, it is the setting for the Shire, a real paradise in this devastated Middle-earth. Behind these green hills lies Hobbiton, the village of the hobbits, built on Russell Alexander's farm. The story begins here, in the House of the Hobbit. The origins of the Hobbit population date back to ancient times, but they have long since disappeared and been forgotten. These little creatures have kept up their ancestors' tradition of living in tunnels and holes. They feel most at home in such dwelling places. The film set for Hobbiton has been preserved, and every morning, dozens of young gardeners lovingly maintain it, ready for the 500,000 visitors who throng here each year. Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy begins here, in this village of 44 little houses dug into the ground on a tiny part of Russell's huge farm.
Well, they were looking in this general region, this area where we are, because it's known for fertile rolling hills, and they thought that would be the best place where they could find this tranquil setting, if you like, for the Lord of the Rings or for Hobbiton. It was all set here with Party Tree Hill, Party Field. They could visualise what they could do and make the Green Dragon, which you can see behind us here.
The reason Russell's farm corresponded to what the film crew was looking for was this massive tree, under which Bilbo celebrates his 111th birthday. That was what made Peter Jackson decide to build Hobbiton here.
It's a big team to develop all the props, the sets, to maintain them really, and to keep everything alive, and the flowers and the gardens. Exactly, there's a whole series of layers from gardening to landscaping to the food's got to be keeping with hobbits or Hobbiton or the Shire, if you like, and we try to keep everything authentic as we possibly can.
My work is I'm part of the maintenance team, and basically I help keep the grass looking green and luscious and alive, especially in the summertime when it gets really hot and dry and matter. We don't want it to be brown. So in terms of the gardens, they aren't perfect. There is certain messiness to them, so they don't look too manicured. Mainly just being overgrown. It isn't too refined, manicured. Just let them grow as big as they want, basically, as long as they're not going along onto the pathways.
A lot of people would love to live here, and it would be nice. Obviously, the hobbit holes aren't quite made for humans, etc., but you never know. Hopefully we might be able to develop one day, but for now, we've got the set looking just like it did during filming, and they tried to make that as real as possible with clothes on the line, smoke coming out of the chimneys, and it's a big set, rolling landscape, very, very real looking and very different, hopefully, than anything else you'll ever see in the world.
For Frodo Baggins, Sam and his fellow hobbits, the journey begins. They must leave the Shire immediately. The One Ring is no longer safe. In Tolkien's epic story, the Fellowship of the Ring embarks on a long journey across a multitude of fantasy landscapes. Despite being a fictional country, Middle-earth has found its true embodiment in New Zealand. The landscape our heroes cross is as much above ground as underground.
New Zealand has a very short history, and exploration in New Zealand is fairly new. And so there's, if you went to Europe, almost every cave system will be explored, but here, gosh, we're only scratching the surface. Like in the last 5 years, we've found more cave than we've found in the 20 years before that. So there's huge amounts left to find.
Entirely covered in woodland just 2 centuries ago, New Zealand was heavily exploited by the first settlers on these islands for its good quality wood. In these vast landscapes, there are still numerous areas of wilderness, such as the jungle, where it is hard to make progress and easy to get lost.
Human beings and human life is very, very short, and geological time is massive. It's on a scale that's hard to imagine. When you talk about 450 million years, that means nothing. But if you took a human here and you put it on a metre-long ruler, that wouldn't even represent the time that human beings have been on the planet. A geological time is almost infinite.
In Tolkien's trilogy, members of the Fellowship of the Ring journey to the depths of the earth to reach the subterranean ruins of the ancient city of the dwarves, the mines of Moria. Since the age of 16, Neil Silverwood has been exploring the subterranean world of New Zealand. A renowned speleologist, he takes part in major expeditions in an attempt to understand its system of naturally formed caves.
Caving in my life is really important because I value the adventure, the hardship, the feeling you don't know what's around the next corner, you don't know what's going to happen next. And I really enjoy the epics. I really actually enjoy the trips where it all goes wrong, where we get flooded in, You know, I really enjoy the tough times as much as the good times. There's very few places left that are unexplored on the planet, you know, so maybe the ocean and caves, and that's really it. So every corner of the globe has been reached, photographed, recorded, mapped, but caves haven't. We don't know what the map's going to look like. There is no map. So we're in Hole in the Cliff, which is a cave system on the west coast of the South Island. And this cave's only been known about for about 20 years. And it's a really special place for me. It's a secret cave. Very few people know where it is. Maybe there's only ever been 20, maybe 30 people ever come here. So my father and I came through here and into this room and were the first human beings, you know, ever to see this place. So these are called soda straws, and how they're formed is H2O plus CO2, water plus carbon dioxide, forming a weak carbonic acid. And the acid comes down through the limestone and etches it away, and then redeposits it in a pure form called calcite. It takes a long time to grow, you know, about 100 years a centimetre. This is the leftovers of life from 30 million years ago. It's pretty unique.
In another chamber of the cave, hundreds of thousands of these long, bioluminescent and transparent glowworms are patiently awaiting their prey.
Glowworms live for 9 months, and then they pupate and turn into a fly called a fungus gnat, which lives for 3 days. And a fungus gnat is just a small little fly. The females glow, the males don't glow. And you can imagine if you only had 3 days to live, what would you do? And each glowworm has 20 or 30 threads hanging down with paralysing serum on the outside. And the reason they glow sort of a greeny blue colour is to attract insects. Insects are flying through the cave. They see this light, they think it's the way out, fly towards the glowworm and get stuck in the threads and killed by the paralysing serum. There's something really special about glowworms. Really unique. New Zealand's the only place that you ever see them, and they look just like the stars, you know. Just it's a really beautiful light. Maybe it's the black rock with the green glowworms, but yeah, something very special about them.
The forces of evil are at work. Sauron's orcs have multiplied, and they are approaching human territory. The Fellowship of the Ring must seek help from Ederas, a kingdom of Middle-earth and the capital of Rohan. In the centre of South Island, Mount Sunday, with the Southern Alps mountain range in the background, was a film location for The Lord of the Rings. This is where the hill fort of Ederas and the dwelling of the good King Theoden were built. Built on this 600-metre high rocky promontory and fortified to withstand 30-kilometre-per-hour winds, this was one of the trilogy's main locations. After filming, the sets were dismantled, leaving places as they were intact. At the end of the road leading to Mount Sunday, less than a kilometre away, Erawan Farm is like the last frontier of a free and natural world. The soul of Erawan resides, first and foremost, in these impressive horses from another era. Clydesdales, imported from Scotland in the 19th century, to work the land and build the country. This place may not be for everyone, but its authenticity suits Aaron, this ex-school teacher who was an extra on the set of The Lord of the Rings. Today, Erawan is the biggest breeding farm for Clydesdales in New Zealand. And despite mechanization, these giant horses are still used to work the land and provide transport around this large area.
We probably make ourselves busier with how much we do with the horses. We have to get out of bed a lot earlier in the morning when we're busy, especially in spring when we're working ground with the horses. It'd be probably a lot quicker if you just got up and turned a key on a tractor, but we love the horses and they're the best fit for this place, so it makes us pretty enjoyable days. So gotta have that, enjoy what you do. I think more than anything, we're caretakers for this land. So we want to keep it in as natural state as possible, but complement that with the farming operation, which is very small scale. The environment here means we can't grow a lot of grass for most of the year, so we can't run a lot of stock. We want to keep the place as traditional as possible. That sort of gets us out of bed in the morning, what we want to achieve, yeah.
Erawan also acts as a junkyard for all sorts of machinery. A dozen old ploughs and carts, all in working order, are stored here and there. This is a living museum maintained by Colin, the charismatic manager of Erawan and Erin's partner. They share a love of horses and this way of life, which respects the land and their ancestors.
It was like it would be over 100 years old, and we bought it mainly because it's a nice light one for at the shows. So we keep it for just shows and parades and things like that mostly. And I'm just trying to get the brakes to work a little bit better because that paddock's a little bit hilly up there. The heads of the screws are just too worn, so we can't. You're never necessarily very good at a lot of things, but you have to be able to turn your hand to all sorts of things, and I don't really like getting grease on my hands, but it happens quite regularly, unfortunately.
The month of February, which is midsummer in New Zealand, is harvest time for the oats for the horses. Sometimes, to get the work done more efficiently, Erawan breaks with tradition and makes a concession to more modern times.
There's certain jobs that we have to do with machinery because we're probably trying to mow 25 hectares at a time. You know, that would take you 3 or 4 days with the horses, whereas you can do it in an afternoon with the tractor and the mower. But any jobs that we can use the horses for, then we try and we do.
All year round, Erawan Farm welcomes young people from the world over who come here to work for a few days or a few months in exchange for board and lodging. It's an enjoyable way to learn these age-old skills.
I don't know what was made in, but all of these machines were made in the heyday of when the horses were still being used, which would be the early 1900s. In the old days, they used to use a lot of what we call spring carts, which are just two-wheelers, and they'd use them and light drays with one horse, just for carting the oats into the stacks.
So just below it, down in the drainage, down in
just
cloudy.
Anywhere sheltered from the wind, obviously.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd go sort of to about that black knob, and then it's an easy climb. You know, it's a long way still, but you're up along the main ridge and
Get it in the morning.
Yeah, best would be up there when the sunrise is.
Oh, absolutely.
People also come to Erawan to go walking in this remote part of the country, where the winds blow constantly, rushing into the wide valleys of the river Rangitata. In these vast, solitary landscapes lies a valley of Middle-earth, which serves as a setting for Helms Deep, the reputedly impregnable fortress that was built by Gondor's men. This is where the third battle in the Lord of the Rings takes place between Saruman's armies and humankind.
They're pack animals, so when you've got good manners, they're all good. And it's not until you get into your everyday work that sheep are getting away and something goes wrong and a dog has to do something a little bit extra on his own. And that's what makes the really good dogs. Same as the good horses, the good people, the good sports people that just go that little bit above and beyond the call of duty.
Since the 19th century, Erawan Farm has had numerous owners. Some have prospered here, others have gone bankrupt. Living and working in this lofty place demands a real profession of faith in the world and in nature.
We're so insignificant in the scheme of things, man and his dogs and his horse, and we're in this vast, big amphitheatre, I suppose, of mountains that they run the show. But it's a lot of fun. You get pretty tired muscles at the end of the day, but we really thoroughly enjoy it.
We're only here for such a very short time in the big scheme of things. So, yes, legally we may own the place, but really we're only guardians, custodians if you like. And the secret is to appreciate being here and to enjoy it, make the most of it. Yeah, really treasure our time here.
On South Island lies one of the wettest and most isolated regions of the world, Fjordland. This is where the Australian plate meets the Pacific plate. The resulting pressure led to the creation of the Southern Alps, with 17 peaks that are over 300 meters high and over 300 glaciers. It was also the source of inspiration for the recreation of the snowy mountain range of Middle-earth, which the Fellowship of the Ring tries in vain to cross. There is no other way through. They must climb the vertiginous Ederas peak in order to reach Mordor. New Zealander Lydia Bradley learnt to climb in these rugged mountains. This outstanding mountaineer was the first woman to reach the summit of Everest without oxygen in 1988. New Zealand's Southern Alps remind her of the harsh conditions in the Himalayas.
So it's quite amazing in the South Island that this chain of mountains only has 3 passes across it for the whole of the South Island. And in the North Island, there's just 4 mountains and they're volcanoes. And the other thing about New Zealand is that it's quite similar to the Himalayas, is that we have big, big glaciers with huge crevasses, and these slopes get really hot in the summer, in the sun, and the rock is not, as Phil has said, the rock isn't very good, so we have loose rock, and that's like the Himalayas, and we have long distances to go. I think this is one of the reasons why we have been so good in the Himalayas, because we know how to suffer. Yeah, walking across glaciers and things like that, yeah. It's epic. It is truly, truly epic, and you have to be quite good. This is not a place for beginners. No beginners belong here, because if something goes wrong, then it's too serious.
This is the biggest wall in New Zealand, G.E.I.E Wall. It is 1,300 meters high and 1,800 meters wide. It is a monster to climb, and only the most experienced climbers risk their lives on this rock face.
Maybe a pro. Looks better.
They met on a path through the Darren Mountains, climbers who travel the world in search of extreme locations. Stephen Fortune, Softon Prestley and Tim Exley are at the foot of the legendary G.E.I.E Wall, which Sir Edmund Hillary conquered in 1970. The first few meters of this granite wall are climbed using equipment. The rest of the wall to the summit, 1,300 meters up, is climbed without belays.
When you're looking up at a rock face, it's each meter of climbing is a problem, and you have to solve the problem with your mind and with your body. There's an infinite variety of types of rock and angles and things you can hold on to, and an infinite number of problems, and everyone will solve it differently. That's what makes it a beautiful sport, and if you can solve the problems, each meter of climbing, each set of problems, each riddle that you solve, then you can end up in some beautiful places.
Sometimes it means you need to run out long sections without any protection, and you just climb. The holds keep coming. The holds are amazing. And you look down and you're a long way above your protection. So if you fall, it's going to be a big one.
The G.E.I.E Wall is immaculate rock. It's incredible. It's beautiful solid granite. It lends itself to Being able to climb very confidently because you're not always worried that every little hold might break. You can just kind of just move and be free and not worry too much about.
This location is really unique because you've got this high glacial plateau, and then we can look down that way and see the ocean, and it's really amazing. You've got the ocean, you've got the bush, the forest on the way up, you've got glaciers, you've got rock walls. I mean, you know, having all those things in such a small area, being close to the coast, is pretty amazing and pretty unique. You heard about and you read about and you read stories about, and it's like you know, it's a place in the movies, or you don't think it's a real place until you come here. It feels like it's a fantasy land.
All right, stay. I'm safe. Up
In the Darren Mountain chain, the rock has been pushed upwards by the numerous earthquakes which have been shaking the region for millions of years. The ice, with its irrepressible power over the rock, has forged these immense valleys. Climbing here is an incomparable experience.
You can climb parts of the wall that no one has ever even seen, let alone climbed before. Which so there's no map, there's no instructions for where to go, there's no fixed protection. So yeah, we're amazingly lucky. Like, look at this, it's such a beautiful place, and getting to climb stuff that people haven't touched before is just, yeah, very lucky.
Got me off below there?
Once they get past the mountains, Frodo and Sam meet Gollum, the sly creature who was famously corrupted by the ring. Gollum becomes their guide and leads them to the land of Mordor, their final destination in their quest to banish the darkness covering the world's forests. Many of the filming locations used in the Lord of the Rings trilogy are to be found on the sacred land of the Maoris, the country's original inhabitants. On North Island, the volcanic region of Tongariro has been occupied by Maoris since they arrived here from Polynesia more than 900 years ago. Deeply connected to the land, over the past few centuries they have witnessed numerous colonial conflicts which have dispossessed them of their country and their culture. It is here that one great Maori leader launched the last armed resistance against the despoilment of their land by British colonists. The last battle between the British and the Maoris took place in October 1869 in the shadow of Tongariro volcano. Owned by the Maoris, the three large volcanoes on North Island, Tongariro, Ruapehu, and Narahoi, became New Zealand's first national park in 1894. Peter Jackson filmed a number of scenes in this barren landscape, which is covered in ash and dust. Bubs is Maori and a keeper at Tongariro National Park. Accompanied by his brother, he shows their young cousin this place, which is highly sacred for their people.
With Naru Hui here, so in the distance there, that darkened lava, so that one was in 1954. This one down here, that young grey coloured one in that there. So that's 1945, and these ones here were kind of late 1800s, and these ones there. The last eruption of Ngāruahui was 1975, but there's no so that's all kind of been washed down, and that in the last 40 years, and that. But basically overdue to erupt in the next every 25 years.
Film tourism surrounding the Lord of the Rings attracts visitors. Every day, over 3,000 people hike across the park, much to the regret of the Maoris, who associate these three volcanoes with deities.
Tongariro is the warrior, so we look at him as male. And that Ruapehu is the protector of the mountain clan, and Ngāruahui is basically as their ultimate servant, I suppose, to do what their bidding is and that. So he does have a role amongst the mountain clans, as do all the mountains.
One tiny part of the national park has remained private and still belongs to the Maoris. For the best part of a millennium, they have been coming here to strengthen their spiritual and physical energy in the hot springs, which rise up through the volcano.
Where we are here is, name of the place here is Kitate. So it is a very, I suppose, sacred and special place to Tūwharetoa, the indigenous people and tribes that live here. For local Maori, it represents our whole identity. It's who we are, it's our ancestor. It's not looked upon as a bit of real estate.
On these sulphurous, gassy slopes, the Maoris try to preserve their culture and their identity. But they feel dispossessed once more of their sacred land, which has been hijacked by the huge commercial success of a fantasy story.
Part of Lord of the Rings was filmed here and that, and there was a decision that was made without our consent. Being part of a fairy tale is hard, and we talk about, and Ngāruahui to us has a long history, but yeah, more people see it as Mount Doom, so it's become something else for a lot of other people. So yeah, it's kind of hard for us to struggle with what people are wanting out of a place.
The Tongariro volcanoes appeared about 2 million years ago. They lie at the southern tip of a chain of volcanoes 2,500 kilometers long. This is the start of the Ring of Fire in the Pacific, and one of the world's 3 biggest zones of seismic activity. New Zealand's other volcanoes are mainly underwater. Some emerge a few hundred meters from the sea, such as White Island, situated off North Island. Since 1970, volcanologist Brad Scott from the Institute of Geology in New Zealand has been keeping a close eye on the volcano's mood swings.
White Island's a really exciting place to visit. It's alive, so we're able to make lots of measurements. We can look at the earthquake activity, how the volcano is shaking. We can look at the gas coming through the volcano. We can look at the crater lake and the hot springs, the water being made in the volcano. And we can look at that over time and see how it changes when the volcano is quiet, when the volcano is busy. Here we have one of the hot springs on the island, and we have a lot of volcanic gas coming through, mainly CO2 gas, and that CO2 gas is rushing through the pool, It makes it look like it's boiling, but the temperature is only about 90 degrees, whereas boiling it should be 100 degrees. So as we were walking here, you could hear the gas coming through the ground, but here, because there's water, it's just coming through the water.
The most recent eruption of White Island was in 2013, and this volcano is still unstable, its topology constantly changing.
The ground we are standing on, you can see a white line in the cliff over here. That is the old ground surface. So if you came here in 1975, you were standing about 10 or 15 metres lower. So the ground when I first came here in 1975 is maybe 15 metres underneath us. So this area has risen. The slope we have walked up is all the debris that has been thrown out.
What with the bubbling mud, a crater full of acid, and the sulphurous gases and smoke given off, this has to be the work of pure evil. In the blazing furnace of Mount Doom, Frodo Baggins finally manages to destroy the One Ring and put an end to Sauron's evil powers once and for all. This marks the start of the Fourth Age of Middle-earth, and the Fellowship of the Ring, despite being eternally linked by friendship and love, is dissolved. When Tolkien wrote that at the end of The Lord of the Rings, would he ever have imagined that one day Middle-earth would be reincarnated in New Zealand?